There we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Plaster, and this is EP Talk, the place where emergency physicians come to talk about important things and meet important people. And my co-hosts today are Mike Silverman, the author of Director's Corner. Many of you will know about that. And representing the next generation of emergency physicians is J.D. Landon from Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia. But our guest today is a person that I'm sure you know the name if you don't know the face. You can be forgiven if you don't know about night shift. You can be forgiven if you don't know anything about Director's Corner. But if you don't know the name Tintinalli, you're not an emergency physician, plain and simple. And our guest today is Judy Tintinalli, a friend of mine for 20, 30 years at least, and one that I have had the honor of calling a friend and a coworker at Emergency Physicians Monthly, and so many things, Judy. It's great to be back with you. You look like you're younger. You actually look like you're going the other direction.
I don't know how that happens, but it must be my light for my, on my computer. I
There
don't know.
you go. There you go. Well, I know that Mike is the kind of taking the lead on questioning you. Don't feel like you're doing a polygraph, but we do want to know everything there is to know about you. So, Mike, take off and go from
Right.
there. We'll be JD and I will be chiming in with our questions as it seems appropriate.
Great. Good morning,
Let me
Judy.
say
Thank you.
something first, and that is thank you for inviting me. And I'll tell you, the days working with EPM were just fantastic. I mean, I miss that a lot.
Yeah.
I think under your guys' leadership, we made a lot of good information available that probably is not as easily available now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Thank
thank you.
thank you. Thank you
Well,
for
thank
helping
you,
us do
Judy.
that.
It is an honor to be able to sit with you. It was great I guess I met you probably 10 years or more ago when you joined EP Monthly as the senior editor. And it was just great to work with you. And then now a chance to sit down with, really the legend. And I'm going to read off a couple of your titles for those who may not know all the details of you, and then I'll jump into the questions. So I know you recently retired too. You are professor and chair emeritus of the Department of Emergency Medicine at UNC Chapel Hill. I know you started the residency there. In fact, I believe I know one of your very. You are an adjunct professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, which is probably very, very unusual for an emergency physician. You are an adjunct professor in health policy and administration, which maybe is not that unusual. And prior to that, you were at Wayne State University, and prior to that, you were at University of Michigan. So it is an honor. And so as we get started, I want to talk a little bit about you. I obviously want to spend a lot of time talking about the book and then some life lessons from you, but let's let our listeners and watchers get to know you first. So from event medicine and helicopters in Michigan to North Carolina, when you look back at your career, what surprises you most about where your professional journey took you?
What surprises me most is I never had anything like this planned. And actually, when I give talks, I always talk to young faculty that they really need to think about where they're going to be 5 years from now. And frankly, I never thought about that. I did things I liked. I looked for things that I might like to do, and I accepted things where I thought I might make a contribution, but I never planned anything.
That's fantastic. Yeah, my philosophy has always been I'm on day one of my 5-year plan, and tomorrow will also be day one. That's as far out as I can view. Uh, and it's amazing, success, the cream rises to the top. And so whatever you're doing, it was going to be successful. And obviously you had a lot of success. Let's go back.
I want the specifics. You started in Michigan, right? Are you from Michigan?
Oh, yes, absolutely. A teeny tiny Polish town named Hamtramck.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes, I went to well, it wasn't a Polish school, it was a Polish Catholic school, went through high school there. Never really imagined what life might hold.
When did you decide you want to go to medical school?
Well, I thought about it a long time, but when I finished my undergrad training, I had actually gotten a master's at the same time. I was doing some work in embryology. I was a TA during my undergrad, and I thought medical school would be too much of a bite. So I did do a year of postgraduate study at Wayne State. And then I thought this is really a waste of my life to really look at things under a microscope. I also taught pathology as a TA there.
Yeah.
And one day, it was a winter day in February. I decided I needed to go to medical school, and I had a car, so I drove downtown to downtown Wayne State University and asked to speak to the admissions director. Well, who would ever think you would even get in? So he said, "Yeah, fine, come in." And I sat down and I said, I really want to go to medical school and I'm ready to start this year. Now, who ever heard of that? And he looked at my stuff and he said, "Okay, you're in." Now, I really think he was working on a PhD in medical education. I mean, this is what I really think. And we had very few women in medical school at that time.
Yeah,
But that was how I started. I
that's
wasn't
crazy.
afraid or anything. I just walked in.
Okay, and the next thing is emergency medicine, because you and I are
Yeah.
roughly the same cohort. And I can, when I graduated from the University of Missouri, they would not announce that I was going to an emergency medicine residency because they didn't think emergency medicine was going to hang around. And so, did you decide to go into emergency medicine from the beginning, or did you slide in like a lot of people, other people did from?
Well, pretty much from the beginning. So when I was a medical student, we all had ER rotations,
Mhm.
and that's exactly where I decided this stuff is really good and it fits me very well.
Yeah.
But I had some other thoughts. I mean, of course, I also was Bruce Janiak's counterpart.
Oh
He had
my.
set up his own residency program. I didn't want to do that because I wanted an official certificate of some sort. So I had applied actually to many places and by chance to internal medicine at Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan.
Mhm.
And I went down there for the interview. I might have been pregnant at that time. I'm not, I can't remember that. And 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 I was interviewed, I can't remember, by one of the subspecialists, and I said, I want to be an emergency physician. And I could not believe it, but I was accepted into the program.
Yeah,
And but during my program, I knew internal medicine wasn't exactly for me. I had some really good attendings who encouraged me in other areas. I did a 3 months extra in cardiology because I thought that was going to be important in emergency medicine.
sure.
But I left U of M to go back to receiving and work with Ron Crone, Brooks Bach, Hal Jane to set up ER there.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you went from your IM residency and you just got a job in EM. And I don't have the years. And I know, roughly when EM was created. And I'm not going to age you, but I know that a lot of people who helped develop the specialty trained in other specialties. So we know that. But you finished residency and your first job was then in EM.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, after my internship, I was a straight medical intern, but at that time, they let us do anything. So I did extra ENT, I did extra trauma. So after my internship, I worked for a year in the ED as a faculty. That's what ED was like.
That's right.
So
That is exactly right. When I graduated from my residency in 82, it was 1 year later, I was the director of emergency department.
that's
Great stories, great stories.
so let's go to JD's generation and younger. What do you think people would be surprised about from medicine in the, let's say, late 70s, early 80s in the ER to where we are now and how you left UNC?
Well, I think emergency medicine now is extremely sophisticated in terms of the scope of what we do, in terms of the knowledge we need to have, in terms of the technical skills that we need to have. And what I find especially interesting, and we may talk about this later, is the huge surge in emergency medicine fellowships.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
And that is a very significant thing for ER,
yeah.
for general, which I now consider general emergency medicine, which is what we were all sort of trained and started
Right,
out doing.
right.
But what is the meaning? Why are all these fellowships developing?
So tell me more about that. First off, why do you
Well, I
think
want to
they're
hear what
developing?
JD, you asked that question, and JD was ready to answer it, and I'm anxious to hear what JD has to say because he's the next generation of this.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, when I hear Mark, you guys tell your stories, in some ways, I think we think, oh man, that sounds awesome. Like those were the
It was
days,
scary.
right? Those were the days where you were like unshackled and could just do the work and focus. And Judy, I love that you label today as sophisticated. I think some of us might call it complicated, uh, in that it feels like a lot of us are fractured in, where like you show up to work and it's like you're a social worker, you're an internist, you're a resuscitationist, you're a, public health person all in one shift. And so in some ways it feels like you're not just a resuscitationist or focusing on critical care or emergencies. You're doing everything. You show up to work and it's like you might put on 10 hats in one shift.
That's a good explanation of how complicated our life has been. Um, well, JD, how long? Okay, you're working in the ER now
I
at
am.
a very, very good, long-term good institution. How long do you see yourself working in the box of the ED?
It's
There's
a
the big question.
It is. So I'm fortunate enough to start slicing my life into some academics early. So just a year and a half, 2 years ago, I picked up a faculty position here. And I think that has been the first stage of the longevity path, if we can call it that. And I hope to be able to log a solid 20 years, but I have to say, the folks who are still showing up and crushing it at 65 and 70, it's hard to imagine doing that. And I have like the absolute utmost respect for the people who can still show up and literally just jump in the trenches and do it again.
And so that's also an interesting phenomenon between the first few generations of ER docs, how everyone has really stayed in it for
Yeah.
so long. But we don't see that trend now. We really don't.
My son was kidding me the other day about my fake retirement party at 65.
Wait, I thought you've had two retirement parties now. I don't think you've just had one.
Yeah, he was kidding me about it, or just kind of saying that was a fake retirement party. You just did it for the gifts or something. I'm not exactly why you did it, but you didn't do it. So anyway, let's get
All
back to
right,
Mike's list.
I got a couple questions, but I'm going to tell you, Judy, about 10 years ago, you asked me to write a column on managing aging in emergency medicine. And at the
Yeah.
time, I didn't know if you were looking at it like yourself or if you had a troubled faculty member that you're like, I'm not sure they can do it. And I put it on the back burner for years. I didn't know how to handle it. But the closer I get to retirement, the more it was in my face. And so the column came out probably 6 months ago, but it was based on that conversation we had years ago. And I think aging in emergency medicine is really hard. So why do you think the proliferation of fellowships is going on, or so many people are looking at it? And then part two is if you were a fresh grad now, what fellowship would you want? Would you pursue any?
Well, because of the, I think, extreme proliferation of fellowships for ER. I mean, it started out earlier with PDM, with sports medicine, with EMS. And so you sort of thought there would be very few going on. But I think individuals were looking for ways to expand some of their areas of knowledge and give them an opportunity to work, frankly, less time, less full time in the ED, but to develop themselves academically or clinically in other areas.
Mhm.
And I think that the current environment in emergency medicine, which I hear a lot about in terms of people who have to work in community groups or who have to work for the corporate groups, how things are changing. And I don't want to be negative about anything really, although we could talk about negativity, but that really gets you nowhere in life. There are so many stresses now that are different than we had in emergency medicine. I mean, if you're working in a busy local ED, you don't practice the way we practice in academics. Forget it. You start at triage, you order all the labs, they get inside, you order more labs, you write your disposition immediately. You have to move fast, fast, fast. And that is not really as rewarding as the original way that we were taught and practiced in emergency medicine.
Mhm. Yep.
And JD, where you work, I doubt you work that way. We don't work that way at UNC. But if you're out in regional EDs, that's how you have to work because there are so few docs, so many patients.
And so, part two of that, what fellowship would you consider? What interests you most
Gosh.
now?
Well, in the past, I'm not exactly sure. ICU began in the ER. So with Mark and my original careers in emergency medicine, there was no ICU. Anesthesia took care of post-op patients.
Right.
So all of the resuscitation, all of the procedures and all that stuff
Yep.
was done in the ED.
Yeah.
So I might have liked that. I might have liked trauma surgery because that was very, very lot of fun. You get to do procedures. So those might be the things I liked. Now, my work in journalism was very interesting, and UNC had established a new little subspecialty in the journalism school, and that was medical journalism. And as a matter of fact, the individual who worked had also written a book for McGraw-Hill much, much earlier on medical journalism. So I called them, and together we put together a rotation for undergrads and grads in journalism to come through the ED. And I wanted to do that because we needed to get emergency medicine more in the public arena, and that is still true.
Mm. Yeah.
Why is it there can be a huge mass shooting in Vegas and there's not a word about what the ER did? They only
Mhm.
talk there about the neurosurgeons that
Mhm.
was in all the
Mhm.
papers.
Well,
So
I
we
will.
taught, wait, medical journalists, they went through the ED. This was pre-COVID. It went on for 10 years and they had to stop because of COVID. They would, of course, be clear about privacy and they would follow a resident or an attending on a shift. They could interview patients, interview the physicians or residents, and then write an article about it. And we reviewed the articles and then they were submitted to publications. And there was something every week in our local and statewide publications about emergency medicine. I thought that was so good. The only
Ju-
group I think that's really doing that now is CAPE. I became a member of CAPE because they have a great public information network. And I
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that I kept following them in all the things they did. CAPE being Canadian Association of
Mm.
Emergency.
Okay, thank you.
I need to actually correct the record here for just a second. You may not be aware of this. Mike knows what, and JD knows what I'm going to say. When the Vegas shooting occurred, and we did a piece, Logan and Kevin Menace did a piece. Not only were we recognized by the New York Times with Sydney Award for the best long form journalism in the country in that particular span. I,
I
I,
haven't forgotten that
I was
because
blown
that's,
away. I was blown away, and I have never stopped talking about the New York Times recognized EP Monthly best long form journalism.
That's pretty good.
that,
David Brooks said, if you want to
yeah.
know what happens in a real emergency, here's what it looks like.
And we need more
A
of
lot
that.
more.
Well,
I
Yes,
agree.
that's
you,
because Kevin then became a guest speaker of honor at surgery departments,
Yeah.
trauma departments for how he worked.
Did you notice in the pit, the program, the pit, when they had their mascal, they actually used Kevin's triage format? Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I
Yeah, they
didn't.
did. Mel Herbert made sure that when they did the triage, it was Kevin Menace's.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but you're right though. I mean, we're there, but we're not seen as much as we need to be.
yeah.
all right. Well, that is, we're going to move on to the book here in a minute. I got a couple other little getting to know you questions if you bear with me here. So, what personality traits do you think served you best throughout your career? You've gone from kind of IM, EM, three residencies, this massive textbook, speaking around the world.
Well, probably being inquisitive. So I guess my way of working in the ED was to be able to spend some time and think about, well, what have I seen that is different that we need to know more about, that we don't know anything about? That was how I fell into the obstetric trauma and pregnancy
Hmm.
protocol that we did because we didn't know anything about it. So that was probably it. Perseverance, of course, was another. And you just keep going no matter what.
Yeah.
I suppose those two, and being
Hmm.
fixed on goals, going through medical school with one child and through residency with two more, and you just like keep going.
Uh-huh. You just one foot in front of the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I'm glad I asked the question though. It was about what I expected. You have to be curious and you have to be willing to work hard and like check boxes. Like you do not get a book done. Like I can't finish a lot of my writings because I can't get the last 5% done. And so you don't finish it unless you're working. Tell us something that for people who only know the name from the book, tell us something else that people should know about you.
People think I only write books, and I was asked to give a talk for one of their residencies in Saudi Arabia, but they didn't want to know the regular stuff. They wanted to know other stuff about me. So that made me think about the other things that I did. And of course, this was part of emergency medicine. But Ron Crone was the leader of our department and the mentor of so many, many people in ER. And he had connections throughout the city. So he had connections with the Grand Prix, with the Penske racetrack. And so I worked on all of those things. As a matter of fact, at Penske, I treated AJ Foyt, who was in a rollover collision, lost consciousness. Oh, that was pretty exciting. Um, I mean, but he was fine. I had to transfer him to Ann Arbor for a CT scan, which at that time was a very unusual thing to do for somebody who had LOC. And so I did different things, and Ron had set up the first helicopter, the medevac program in the state of Michigan, thinking that would help bring people into the Detroit area hospitals. And it so happened that I lived at that time in downtown Detroit, and one of the areas by us was a park that was a great landing pad. So it turned out I was doing about 90% of all of flight. Well, so just think about that. There was a pilot, a co-pilot, and two other people in that chopper, me and the patient. And so there was no nurse, there was no ICU specialist, there was just me. So that was really very exciting, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
If I had known you had that kind of experience, I probably would have recruited you into the Marine Corps to go to Iraq with me.
Yeah.
That's exactly the situation we had in Iraq, and I think that you would have felt right at home, right at home.
Oh man, I remember landing. Actually, I worked in Ann Arbor for a while. I was part-time attending there, and because I was one of the few people who at that time knew any medevac, I used to fly on the Ann Arbor helicopters. And I
Mhm.
remember going on one where the local EMS crews could not intubate somebody who was laying on the ground. And I'm
Mm.
like, oh my God, the EMS can't do it.
Yeah.
The, I don't intubate people on the ground, but
Mhm.
I remember being scared to death, but I did it. I was able to intubate them. So there are a lot of experiences with that.
Yeah.
I mean, in the meantime, I like reading. I would read a lot of stuff. I play the piano, which I'm trying to
Mm.
resume now. You can't believe how you lose that dexterity. It's muscle memory, and I played very, very well as a young person. Now it's
So
like, ooh, plink,
do,
plink,
do
plink.
you
I really got to practice.
do you still take lessons?
Well, I have taken lessons intermittently, and one of my plans, if I could truly get the time, would be to take more lessons. I have two opportunities to do that. Um, Yeah, and I've stopped. We have a really good guitar teacher in Pittsboro, North Carolina, where I live, and I stopped in there, and the guy said, "Yes, come in, but unless you practice every day, I don't want you to come in. I'm not going to teach you until you start practicing." So those are on my list. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. We're going to switch. JD, this is your chance to also pull out your copy. So this is, it says seventh edition.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm at least two,
I also
three,
have seven.
four behind.
Most
Man, that
recent is
book
the
had
13th, right?
Well, we're working on the 10th, but there were two
Oh,
ASAP editions before.
uh,
So there were
okay.
actually 11, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. I was
Count
thinking it
them
was the
all.
13th
Yeah.
edition, but okay.
So
Yeah.
I got my first copy. I was a third year medical student doing actually a medicine rotation, and I got the third edition, which was paperback, and
Yeah.
uh, and I crushed Morning Report because it was all the emergency. You admit your patient and you present it in the morning, so it's all the emergency stuff, and it was great. So I've had this book forever. So I guess my first question for you, I know what I call it. What do you call this book?
Well, it started being called a study guide in emergency medicine because I was really overwhelmed with thinking that we could do everything. So the study guide has sort of lost vogue, and now it's just Tintinelli's emergency.
All right, thank you. So
That's all right. You got her to say it.
Does it surprise you that every emergency physician refers to this book by your name?
Well, it's a cool name. I mean, it really, really is.
That is.
And, in Europe, they never knew Tintinelli was a woman. I remember I was invited to talk at one of the very first European conferences I ever went to, and they introduced me. And when I stepped on the stage, they were like, "What? You are Tintinelli?" Um, but people seem to recognize me everywhere. And I'm like, is it my glasses? Is my hair? I mean, what exactly is it? Um, but they also, what is interesting is they've told me, we view you as a person, like in other books, textbooks that we have, surgery or medicine, you don't really know who that person is. But because we see you, we meet with you, you sort of represent what emergency medicine is.
Yeah.
So, and
You're
that's
the
sort of hooked up with the name, I
Yeah,
guess.
you were the mentor to a lot of people. That's the reason why in my intro I said there's just a whole lot of folks who know your name but don't know your face. And I know you're famous when in certainly the circles you travel in, but there's a lot of folks who would look at that book and say, "Who is that person?" And we want to make that person known because you have always been such a delightful person. Not just smart, not just persistent, not just gorgeous, but you are just a wonderful. I would say the thing that has made you successful is that you have such a winning personality, and I think that there are a lot of folks who are bright and do good things and such that are just not always fun to be around. And I can say that in all the years that I've known you, and all the circumstances, you have always been a lot of fun to be around.
Well, you're really so complimentary, Mark. But I'll tell you, I get because it's easy, if you spell my last name correct, it's easy to get my email. I get emails from people around the world. I got one from Nepal where an ER physician was questioning how we mixed up osmolarity and osmolality. And I'm like, oh my God, you know. And Iraq, I get a lot from Iraq, from medical students. It's rather amazing. They point out errors in the book, which is very helpful. Of course,
Everybody's an editor. It's everybody's an editor. So obviously I want to talk about the origin of the book, but before we get there, I want to ask you, as someone who's read this book, and I'm going to ask you how many times you've read it, but as someone who is, the editor of the Ultimate Study Guide, in the old days of ABEM 10-year recertifications, how much pressure did you feel when you had to take your recert exam?
oh, awful. Because because as writing the book, I had to take so many years off before you could take the board. I can't remember between editions. So you wouldn't know the questions or I can't remember that. Oh my God. So I was taking it with my senior residents. I'm like, and I've never been a good test taker. But anyway, so I was very, very scared. Very scared.
Do you know my story? The third time
Oh,
that I
I know
that
this story.
that I recerted, I just come off a night shift, and it was the first time. I always counted on it was big. It would always be in a big room, and so there's this energy in the room. It's you got to be competitive. You want to see, can you how fast can you get through the test and all this. And I showed up to take the test, and it was a computerized exam, and I walked into this totally silent booth. And I sat down to take this test, and the next thing I know, I'm kind of clicking, 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 and I fell asleep. And I fell asleep, and
Oh,
I
geez.
woke up when there was a voice said, "You now have 10 minutes to finish the exam," and I went,
Oh,
and and I
and you
had
did it?
like
You
30
did
or
it.
40 questions. Oh no, I ended up failing that exam by 1 point, and I had to pay $1,500 to take that sucker again
Oh
because
man.
I was determined. What I should have done is just like A. Then I gotten a fourth of them. And as it is, I tried to answer them and I didn't finish the exam. I had like 15, 20
Oh,
questions that I didn't put an answer for and missed
now
by
that's
one
a
point.
story. They should have awakened you if they saw you sleeping.
Oh
Gee.
man, you know what? I actually thought about forcing myself to like throw up on the keyboard or grabbing my chest and falling in the floor until and
Oh.
I can't. I thought, what do I do? It was a moral dilemma. It was a moral dilemma because I thought, if I fake a heart attack, then I'll be able to take this thing again
Have a heart attack.
or have a heart attack. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
Well,
course of editing each version, how many times do you read it cover to cover? Do you read every word that's written in there?
I actually do. And so the question is, well, why are there errors or tables that are wrong? It's because, well, first of all, I speed read, which I learned actually when I was an undergrad. And that's a benefit, but it's also a problem because when you read so fast, you pick up the gist of it.
Yeah.
But I do read the whole thing, and I did for the ninth edition. And yes, I do. I
How
do.
many pages is the most recent edition, Mike?
This one goes to over 2000, and this is a few
2000.
editions behind.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, so let's talk about the beginning of the book. How do you get started and say, we're going to do this book? And where do you jump in the process?
Well, ASAP had many committees at the beginning as we were developing the board exam and knew that there was going to have to be an exam. And people started saying, well, what am I supposed to read anyway? Well, there was a committee, but the two that I remember doing the most was Bob Daly, who was in California, and Peter Rosen.
Denver.
They and other people had gotten together and went through all the existing books and picked out material that they thought was supposed to be relevant for emergency medicine to know. And so what you were left with their work was literally pages and pages and pages of documents, like a room full. And so then they were not in any shape to study or to read. They were simply topics to cover. There was an ad in JSIP that they wanted somebody to write the book. So I thought, I'll apply. I had already been writing for JSIP. I was doing case conferences or something. So I liked the writing and I worked a lot to get things clear. And it turned out I was the only person truly who applied. So I got the job.
Only person.
So
And
They looked at the mountain of work that was going to be, and it
that was a
probably.
lot. And at that
this is the
time, ASAP offices were in Lansing, Michigan.
Mhm. Yep.
So I used to work in the morning, and then ASAP would actually fly me to Lansing because we didn't have the expressway system that we do now.
where were you? You were still in
Every so
Michigan at the
often,
time.
every quarter, and we would go over. I had one really wonderful woman who was an ER nurse who would edit with me, and th that's how we went. Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
This is the second time that would hit me that, life is really about showing up. You had said your two things were inquisitiveness and perseverance. But I think it's also wanting to be involved and do something.
Yeah.
Uh and clearly this is
Just raising your
who
hand. I'll do it. I'll do it.
who volunteers to organize all of this and create it. So how long did it take to get the first edition out?
Oh, I really can't remember, but it didn't take long because it was a loose leaf format. And the idea was that I had and that ASAP agreed to was there was a Scientific American at that time
Right.
that had a loose leaf format and they would
Right.
keep publishing editions that way. And I thought, well, certainly the specialty is going to grow. So that was how we started. So it was, I don't know, it went pretty fast. I would say less than 2 years.
Oh,
Now, I
wow.
wrote most of it.
That
I
was my
did the
next
speed
question. Is
and I didn't do other stuff. And I did have access to all the topics that they were stored at the ASAP offices. So I could make sure that everything was really covered. But I used to get up
Crazy.
earlier in the morning and work on that. And then the kids would wake up and we get them off to school. And that's how things went. Yeah. I also
JD's
had a
got
job that I didn't have to work as many shifts as other people did.
yeah,
So, yeah.
JD's got four little ones, and so he's shaking his head, going, "Oh man,
Uh,
I don't think
A superwoman.
well, I tell you, three after you talk to most people who had three kids, and they said it's after four that you have a crowd. After three, that you have a crowd. So that's how you feel.
Oh my, oh that's crazy.
what responsibility do you feel in terms of editing and putting out this book that we all use to pass our board exam? And every residency, I think, probably has their kind of board review based on the study guide. Do you feel responsibility for keeping it up to date, advancing it? What do you feel with that?
I feel a very heavy responsibility. I mean, very heavy. You don't want to have mistakes. You don't want to have things that are incorrect. You want to make sure that you have content that covers a lot of different experiences. You want to make sure that you don't, I hate covering guidelines. As a matter of fact, I try to not add them to the book because, first of all, people who write guidelines, it takes them years to write guidelines. They're impossible to interpret. The worst ones are pediatric guidelines. If you
Mm.
ever try to read them, I'm like, what do I do? I see what they're talking about, but why are they so
Yeah.
afraid to tell you what to do in specific situations? So you want to cover things that apply to practices around the world, and that's getting quite difficult as emergency medicine expands. But wherever you are, they practice the same around the world
Yeah.
in terms of the acute problems, the overcrowding problems, the chronic problems they have to deal with. Now, some of the techniques and the treatments may change, and you have to make sure that you cover all of that. But it's a huge responsibility, and I'll wake up at night thinking, why do you all, I mean, I'm sure everybody does this. Why do you wake up in the middle of the night with things that you forgot or made a mistake? Why do we do that? I don't want to do that. I want to sleep through the night.
I wake up in a sweat. And I don't know exactly why I'm sweating, but I'm doing something isn't right, you know?
And the worst of the lower acuity areas in the ED when you work
Mm.
there, I'm
Mm.
like, oh my God, I should have done this. I should have done that. I wonder if she's still alive. And, I would
We,
sometimes call people back because
we've
not in the
all
middle of
I
the
think
night, but the
I'm
next
pretty
day.
pretty sure I
Yeah.
called somebody back about a week ago with one of those like, oh my God, good. What is the process? Been the biggest change that you've seen over the last, I mean, the book's been around 40 years.
40 years.
What do you think the biggest change has been between getting it started and where we are now?
Well, I could talk about that in different areas. I mean, the first is content, because you have to make sure that you have all the correct content in. The second is really medical publishing, which is frankly, I think, under great threat with AI. I read Chat GPT and I'm like, this sounds like something I read in the Annals of Emergency Medicine. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no question that AI is using material that others have published,
Hmm.
which is a big threat for medical publishing, for sure. And I remember when anybody could take anybody's music and play
Yeah.
it anything, and then that led
Napster.
to a loss of income for musicians and players and writers, and that was all changed. So we may have to see changes like that in the use of AI,
Hmm.
or at least the kinds that I use at any rate. So that is impacted. And then um, for the last few editions, we have to keep it at one volume, not two volumes, because then you never know what volume you've got to go to for your stuff. So we're faced with publishing more content, being pithy with words, not using unnecessary words. And we have a page limit because that's all you
Hmm.
can glue a book together with. So,
Yeah.
but
Do you
accuracy and responding in a way that is useful to people around the world is really important. The Europeans use the Tintinelli for their exam book.
Mhm.
So, of course, looking at US and European guidelines, even though I talk a bit negatively about guidelines, they do have great statements about what you should do and when you should do it. We have to make sure we cover those. And we look at the WHO as well, which usually is a lot broader and a lot shorter than the other types of guidelines. So it's a big
Given
responsibility.
given the book length limits, do you find there's topics that you want to include and then you just don't have space for it?
Individuals always ask, you need chapters on this type of administrative problem, and we focus we decided we're just focusing on clinical medicine. That's
Mhm.
Yeah.
all you can do.
Yeah.
And we're not an ultrasound book. John Ma has that book, and others have excellent ultrasound teaching materials through podcasts and videos. So we can't do that, but we can function well. Well, this is what I say. The book is for teaching and learning, and it's for teaching and learning clinical medicine. And once we focus on that, we have our environment pretty much set up.
That's a great way to look at it. You know, my son's in college and he hasn't had a textbook yet. He gets them online and he may or may not use them, but I know we pay for them. Uh, what is the role? Do you see the actual hard copy textbook going away? What is the role of it
No.
in your vision going forward? And I'll leave it at that. What's your vision?
That has a complex answer
That's what I'm hoping.
because there are many ways of learning. And to be honest, the best way of learning is reading, taking notes, rephrasing the material in your own words, and then that is how one learns, but then you add the teaching to it. I mean, there is no question. Now, digital books, they're reading. There is a digital version in Access Emergency Medicine, which is the total emergency medicine group from McGraw-Hill. But when you're looking at that kind of digital material, it is still reading. But unless you have the opportunity to take notes or have a notebook or put notes in the digital version, it's not as good and you don't really learn. There are millions of studies on that. What about listening? So, we're all talking here. Spoken words are evanescent. The moment you say them, they're gone. And they are not good tools for learning. Conferences are not good tools for learning because you're looking there. I'm like, why do people always take photographs of these slides? That's because they want to print it out and read it and take notes so they can learn about it. So listening is not the same. Reading podcasts or blogs is not the same, but they have other advantages. You can identify with the personality. You can get the emotion of what they're talking about. You can get a focus of what they're talking about. And the same is true of blogs and posts as well that are not audio. But you typically do not learn, you do not retain information unless you do the things I said at the beginning. You read, you take
Mhm.
notes, you rewrite it in your own terms. I fell into a piece of literature written by a German psychologist around the turn of the century, and he did the material that he learned and studying himself, how he learned, is actually the focus of how people are learning today. And his name was Ebbinghaus, and he taught himself how to memorize lengths of digits, different phrases, and then he did studies to see how long he could retain it with the first repetition, a second repetition, a third repetition. And if you think about learning, we learn things in medical school. And then we go back in into residency, we're like, you know, I learned this earlier, but I sure didn't remember it or understand it. And then
Hmm.
if you do clinical practice or fellowship and you go to conferences, you're like, wow, this is the third or fourth time I'm hearing this stuff. It takes that long to really incorporate it into learning. Why is that important in ER? It's important because we need to know these facts in a flash.
Mhm.
when we're working in the ED. So that's why that type of learning is important. So when you immediately, I need labetalol, this is the dose, these are the I don't have to think about it. And
Mhm.
that's because of the way we have learned.
It's fascinating. Do you see this book as you're gearing it towards the residents then? This is the study guide for the board exam, is how it started, it sounds
It's
like.
how it started. Yeah, yeah.
In what is it matured to now? Is it, we got rid of all the books in our physician lounge at our hospital. We decided
Uh-huh.
everything's online. No one's going into the lounge anyway.
Yeah.
So we got rid of all the books. We're in construction, so our lounge is disappearing. And so we had to get rid of all the books. Uh, is there a role for books in the community ER? Uh, or is this something as an attending, I'm still going home to look at?
Ooh, good question.
You can't really, well, this is why I stated the book is for teaching and learning because
That's
it is
mhm,
not good for looking up. If there's a web version that
mhm,
has a good searchable focus,
Yeah.
you can look up tables and dosage tables. Only in that circumstance is a book useful. But a book is a building block. There is no
mhm,
question. So I know now in Cord, there is a group that are a group of individuals who are looking at, well, how we can just use the different posts and the phone blogs and just for teaching. But, it's sort of scattered information. It's information on certain points, and it's not a building block. It is like, I don't want to say icing because icing seems superficial, but it's an addition. It is not the building block. Now, I write books, so that what it
mhm.
seems to me. Yeah.
Is there a part of it, a section, a chapter that you're most proud of through the years?
A section, a chapter.
Chapter,
Oh, I think it's the foreword because in it, McGraw-Hill has a standard foreword, but I say this is simply to write um, what is, I can't remember the words, what are clinically applicable in a variety of circumstances or something like that. It
Mhm,
doesn't say that what we write in here is absolutely true, but we try to write down what most people think works.
mhm.
And that is important. Now, I doubt that lawyers read that forward, but I put specific words in for that. But in terms of chapters, um, I have to look. We're working on an app, so I can talk to you about that later. But I've been looking at chapter introductions, and I'm like, God, these authors are good. They tend to write in an introduction what this is, what a definition is, why is it important, and I pay a lot more attention to that. I'm sure most users do not, but they're really good information. But a
So
specific chapter, I don't know. Yeah.
fair enough. You've written the entire book and you've edited numerous editions. Since you brought it up, what am I looking for the future of Tintinalli, the study guide? Is it an app? Is it all online? What's the future hold?
Well, in terms of publishing, the book internationally is huge. I mean, huge, huge, huge. So there will be a book. There is going to be a 10th edition we have just started working on. And it's a complex process, but I think we're going to be done in 2 years, actually. Um, so in the meantime, the web version, which is available, a lot of people don't know about it because it's a separate publication, but there are continual content updates that are available only on the web. And that has been my job as well in between editions. So there's a lot of content updates, especially in cardiology and pediatrics. Um,
And the way to get to that is access. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, so Access Emergency Medicine is the big website. And McGraw-Hill has that for all the specialties, Access Anesthesiology, Access Surgery,
Okay.
all that. The way
And
that's,
that's something that physicians can purchase. Is that a membership or is that uh,
I
a
write them, I don't sell them, and
well,
it's
I'm actually thinking of both for myself and also our viewers to say, well, okay, so here's straight from your mouth how to get to this, and
institutions buy it. So the university's library has
Mm.
it, and that's how you get it.
Okay, okay,
So,
but
There may be
a
individual
community hospital would
subscriptions.
not.
I have no idea how much they cost, if they're affordable, or how you would do it.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure how McGraw-Hill is going to handle that as times move on. I mean, I don't make their policies. You know,
yeah. No.
I comment on it. I mean, I have, you know, influence with them, but not in
No, I'm
terms
just
of how
trying to say
emergency
to our
medicine.
viewers, if you wanted to do this, go on, on the internet and look at for Access Emergency Medicine, McGraw-Hill, and see if they have a way for an individual to get some sort of membership or not membership, but a
Yeah,
subscription.
it may
access.
well be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Or
find out.
many of the corporate groups have a subscription. So
Yeah,
when you're working at a group with a subscription, you can find it. Yeah.
yeah.
Many of the big ones have it. It's not just universities.
So
Interesting.
as we wrap up the study guide part of this interview, and this has been fascinating, can you give me a little tidbit, something behind the scenes that none of us know about this in any of these editions over the last 40 years? What would surprise us to know?
Um, well, okay. What we've been doing for 4 years is working on an app. So that was my idea, promoted it to McGraw-Hill. They're like, oh, wow, we're the only of their publications that has an app. So this is a point by point, it's built bullets. I mean, period. And that we can't use old time academics to write because they don't know how to write the way we practice. They write teaching and learning. This app is for doing. So
Hmm.
we've got that set up. It's actually going to be presented at ASIP in Chicago, and McGraw-Hill went, we have our own booth
Hmm.
just for the app. So I have like 9 people who are writing, no old farts left in this
I
because
didn't get anything in the mail, so I'm thinking that must be in that
well, I mean, there are
classification.
some old farts that think like that. There is no question. But in general, I've been working on bringing together a new group of people.
Yeah.
And so that is the app. Then we wrote this for the app to be electronic on your phone, where one click should bring you to the information you want. And there's probably, to be honest, 2 clicks to get into the exact information, but that's it. But we're taking the app and writing it into a new manual, which is going to be bigger than the manual. But this, I think, is going to be very popular because this is more like the bullet oriented, the doing.
Hmm.
So that's what we're working on. And then the 10th edition will be, again, teaching and learning, making sure we keep in the pathophysiology that you need to know, but not these stupid formulas that nobody cares about. Trying to limit the pathophysiology to what the key points might be,
Hmm.
for example.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, this has been a wonderful hour with you. I thank you for your honesty, transparency, rolling with all my questions, telling the stories about how we got here. So thank you so much for your time this morning. Mark, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, this has been a delight. Judy, again, I don't want to slobber all over you, here, but
Stop slobbering
yeah,
then.
no, I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But the truth is, I've been looking for. In fact, I jumped on this last week when I thought that I was all geared up to do this last week, and I was really disappointed when I had it wrong in my calendar, and so I'm so happy that we got to do this, and frankly, there's a lot of other things I'd like to pull you back into to discuss because of your breadth of knowledge. And one of the things that I think as a community physician, I've always been a community emergency physician, somewhat, and is understanding the international um, um, implication of emergency medicine, and particularly Tintinalli's reach into the international emergency medicine scene. And I think that sometimes as you say, a community physician is kind of got his head down and he's chugging through the cases and stuff. He doesn't realize that is the same thing is happening in Rwanda, and it's happening in Mexico City, and it's happening, in Nairobi. And this information is going to be modified in some ways, but it's still the basic stuff. And emergency medicine is the foundation for practicing real medicine around the world. And so the fact that you have put together this compendium of information that is so broad and so reaches into so many cultures is a fantastic thing. It's historic, in fact. So I love the fact that we know you and you're our friend, and we got to kind of shine a little bit with your glow, and thank you so much. And we'll have you back. And to our listener viewers, I think that you can appreciate that this is the new version of Emergency Physicians Monthly, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And come back and we'll try to present more material. Take care.
Well, thanks. And it was great participating all this and seeing everybody and meeting JD and especially Mike and Mark. Mike, we've had such good discussions.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well,
Often, how opposites attract, for sure.
well, thank you so much. And I look forward to our next discussion.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Take care.
Thank you.